Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of Quick Updates. For this episode, we're going landscape. This edition is a bit longer, but you'll soon see why. In this special edition, we're excited to be joined by some very special guests, a member of parliament, a senator, a healthcare provider, and two individuals personally affected by disease and disability, and we're getting their reactions to the outcome of Bill C-7. So it's Wednesday, March 24th, and this is Quick Updates. Bill C-7, an act to amend the criminal code regarding medical assistance in dying, recently passed the House of Commons and the Senate and received royal assent. We wanted to take a few moments to consider all that went into this particular issue, the monumental effort of many parliamentarians and the grassroots campaign associated with it. So many of you did so much to raise your concerns about this legislation with our leaders. Joining us, we're privileged to welcome the Shadow Minister for Justice, Vice Chair of the Standing Committee of Justice and Human Rights, Member of Parliament, Mr. Rob Moore.
Hi, this is Rob Moore, Member of Parliament for Fundy Royal and Conservative Shadow Minister for Justice. Over the past several months, we've heard from hundreds of groups and thousands of Canadians that are concerned about the Liberal government's expansion of medical assistance in dying in Bill C-7. As the Vice Chair of the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights, I put forward a number of amendments that would protect vulnerable Canadians and protect the conscience rights of Canadians. Unfortunately, the other parties defeated these amendments. And then at the final stages of debate on Bill C-7, the Liberal government put forward another amendment that would expand medical assistance in dying to those suffering with mental illness. Again, we put forward an amendment to stop this, but it was defeated by the Liberals and the Bloc Québécois. I really want to thank ARPA for all of their work throughout this process in raising important issues about protecting vulnerable Canadians as well as the conscience rights of all Canadians. And now we move to another phase, which is a review of medical assistance in dying in Canada. Conservatives will be there to stand up for vulnerable Canadians and for conscience rights. And I want to thank you today for all the great work that you do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. We are so thankful to all of our MPs who stood up and raised concerns about this legislation, proposed amendments, held press conferences, interacted with disability rights groups, and more. These efforts do not go unnoticed. The Senate was also very involved in Bill C-7, and despite the work of some of our dedicated senators, amendments were added that included access to mental health and more. We're privileged to be joined by the leader of the opposition in the Senate, Senator Donald Plett.
Hi, my name is Don Plett. I'm a senator for Manitoba and the leader of the opposition in the Senate. Like you, I was tremendously saddened to see the results of the vote on Bill C-7. Many of us worked very hard to bring forward amendments that would have enshrined meaningful safeguards to protect vulnerable Canadians. But sadly, they were all voted down. Instead, we ended up with a law that is far more radical than any of us could have ever anticipated. Throughout the process, I was struck by the stories of Canadians living with a disability who have been fighting every day for adequate supports, for a chance at a good life, and for the opportunity to be full and equal members of our society. Instead of working to improve their access to community supports, the Trudeau government chose to offer them a way to end their lives. The message this bill sends to the disability community is truly tragic. While we are troubled by the results, please know, however, the fight is far from over. With a parliamentary review set to commence in the near future, we need to make sure that the voices of those most profoundly impacted will continue to be at the forefront. I want to thank all of you for your support, and may God richly bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Plett. We're so thankful for all the work that you and other senators invested in this issue to raise the concerns of vulnerable Canadians with disability and mental illness. But beyond Parliament Hill, C7 will also change the landscape of Canada as we know it. Melanie Harthorn is a registered nurse who has directly dealt with patients in these types of situations.
Hi everyone, my name is Mel, and I'm a nurse that has worked in an ER for many years. The amendments that were passed are very concerning to me. Among other things, it devalues the lives of those with mental health concerns. Now, when I was working and someone was brought into the emergency department with suicidal ideations, the physician could write what's called a Form 1 if he or she was a risk to themselves. With a Form 1, that individual was forced to remain in hospital against their will. Why would we do that? Because we knew that these individuals were crying for help, and this was one way in which we could help them. They needed time and physical and mental support, evaluation, medication, counseling, therapy, proper nutrition, the list goes on. If someone continued to desire suicide, it just meant we had to try harder to meet their needs. We needed to get more creative and be more diligent. When suicide is seen as an acceptable treatment, if that's a narrative that we're willing to accept, then we accept that we've lost. We cannot help you. You're right, your life is not worth living. And I don't know who's pushing this narrative, but I do not believe it is the medical community. We are not losers. Canadians deserve to have a medical system that is going to fight for those with mental health concerns, not one that is going to give up on them. I don't know why the government thinks we are in the killing business. We are not. We want no part in that. We are health care professionals, not health kill professionals. So please continue to contact your elected representatives and tell them what kind of healthcare system you want.
Thanks very much, Melanie. As the Senator mentioned, he was struck by stories from Canadians with disabilities. Late in 2020, we interviewed pastors John and George Vimpopta, pastors and brothers who both are subject to long-term debilitating diseases. The videos that we took of them were shared directly with parliamentarians some 181 times. Now that Bill C7 has passed, we asked for their thoughts. Here is Pastor John Vimpopta.
On March 2nd, my MP Karina Gold wrote to me in response to a letter I written to her on February 23rd. This was before the recent parliamentary vote on Bill C7. In her letter, she also wrote concerning the conscience rights of some of our fellow citizens. She wrote, with respect to conscience rights of healthcare workers, I should note that the existing law specifically acknowledges these rights. The previous Bill C7's proposed amendments will not change this. The federal government also remains committed to working with provinces and territories to support access to medical assistance in dying while respecting the personal consciences of health care professionals. I was amazed at Ms. Gould's brazenness in writing this to me. At the same time we were corresponding, the BC government was engaged in a hostile takeover of a hospice in that province. It was the board's refusal to provide MAID. This hostile takeover simply demonstrates when our governments pass laws that no longer restrain the fallen nature of its citizens, our society's response is an avalanche, which destructive force and speed only increases exponentially. The federal government has unleashed a force of destruction that we can hardly imagine. I don't want to make predictions, but as a citizen with Parkinson's, progressive debilitating disease with a high possibility of depression becoming a prominent symptom, I enter into palliative care or a hospice with increasing intimidation.
Thank you, Pastor. And now, Pastor George Vimpopta.
Hi, Colin. Thanks for focusing on Bill C7. As someone who has had MS for 38 years, it is something that I am deeply concerned about. Bill C7 says that some lives are unworthy of life. Bill C7 promotes ableism, the view that the able-bodied are living superior lives, more worthy of life than the disabled. Bill C7 sends a message that if you have a physical or a mental disability, you are living a life that is not worthy of life. Bill C-7 promotes death rather than help vulnerable people by providing much-needed medical and social support, such as palliative and hospice care for those who need it. Over past decades and years, great strides have been made in developing therapies to treat mental illness as well as physical suffering and pain. We have the ability to help the suffering. The question is, do we have the will to do so?
Thank you, pastors, for your willingness to share your perspectives and the real impact that Bill C-7 has now and could have for you in the future as you continue to live with the impact of these diseases every single day. MP Moore and Senator Plett both mentioned an outpouring of concern and political action from so many Canadians on Bill C-7 at every stage. I do want to encourage you that the grassroots action each of you have taken part in was essential in opposing this legislation. It was a part of the reason that there was only a 31 vote difference in the end between those in favor and those opposed in the House. While we were very disappointed with the result, I've been encouraged to see so many Canadians engaging passionately on this issue over the last year. Here's a couple of quick stats. Approximately 30,000 flyers, postcards, and posters were distributed across the country. A whopping record-breaking 3,579 easy mails were sent on Bill C-7. 72 of you took part in our lobby campaign last fall to meet with members of Parliament. 28 of you were involved in calling the members of the House of Commons Justice Committee, encouraging them to vote against Bill C-7. And more recently, many of you were involved in calling MPs at the final vote as well. I can honestly say, I've never seen such an immense effort from you, our supporters, and we are so thankful. After all, ARPA is you. Bill C-7 may be over, but we still have work to do in the coming weeks and months. We're hoping that you will continue to join with us in opposing euthanasia in Canada, striving for conscience protection, and more. That's it for our special edition Quick Updates this week. Thanks to you for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.